Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! My friend Adam shared a story with me, and he had this gym. Back in the mid-90s, he was a young college student. This was before he met his wife Jessica. Strapped for cash, he took a job as a server, cook, and delivery driver at a mom-and-pop pizza restaurant. Most of the people he interacted with were great, but then there was Karen. It was a weekend night during the final semester of his senior year, so it was pretty quiet. A standard order for a large cheese pizza and breadsticks came in. As the only driver on duty that night, Adam was sent to deliver to Dragon Karen and her offspring. Upon arrival, Adam immediately felt a strange sensation in his gut. The complex was run down and looked shady. Just wanting to deliver and leave, he passed a CCTV camera and headed to the address. He heard a gaggle of children running around and screaming and hoped it was a good sign. Surely nobody would dare do anything stupid around their own children, right? He knocked on the door and Karen answered. Looking over her shoulder, Adam could see that the apartment was small but clean and well kept, as much as it could be with a bunch of children running amok. "Hi, did you order?" Adam began. Karen grabbed his arm and began pulling him into the apartment. "Finally, it's about time you got here." Adam wriggled free of her grasp and backing up a couple of feet said, Whoa. Back up, what are you doing?" "You're delivering my pizza, right?" Karen asked. "Yeah," Adam replied. "You're going to serve us. I'm a single mother with 3 children, so I need all the help I can get." A strange feeling in Adam's gut intensified. I need to get back to the restaurant. I'm the only driver on duty." "They can wait. Now get in before the pizza gets cold." Karen insisted, reaching out her claw-like hand to grab Adam. She looked at him as if she were a hungry shark, and he was a wounded seal. Adam dropped the boxes and ran out, not wanting to be dragged into her den. She yelled after him, "Get back here!" As he didn't have a cell phone, he rushed back and told the owner what happened. The owner made sure Adam was okay and told him not to worry about it. Adam forgot about the experience until a couple of days later. He was busy cutting and boxing pizzas when the owner approached and said, "Adam, there is a couple of cops here to see you." A bit worried, Adam saw 2 detectives, their badges visible. They introduced themselves and asked to speak with him. Adam agreed and they went to an unused booth. They inquired if he had delivered pizza to a particular address a couple of days ago. Adam confirmed, asking, "I did. Why? What's going on?" The older detective revealed that Karen had reported Adam for trying to assault her children. Now Adam was really nervous. At the time, he was applying to be a police officer, a lifelong dream. He knew that any allegations of any time would be a black mark against him. The detective, noticing Adam's nervousness, softened and asked, "What's happened, son?" Adam recounted the delivery, how Karen tried to drag him into the apartment to serve the pizzas, how he dropped the boxes and took off, and that the owner was aware of the situation. After he finished, the detectives exchanged the look, nodded, then turned back to Adam, who was sweating bullets at this point. The older detective smiled and said, "You're okay, son. We know you're telling the truth." Confused, Adam listened as the detective explained. This wasn't Karen's first report to the police about a delivery driver trying to assault her children. This, coupled with inconsistencies in her story and a CCTV footage capturing the entire event, made them suspicious. They wanted to hear Adam's version of events before proceeding to the next steps, whatever they might be. Adam told me he was relieved that he was sitting down because his knees gave out. The detectives collected his contact information, thanked him for his time, and left. As a result of her stunt, Karen's name and address were added to the restaurant's blacklist. I'm chronically depressed and generally average. Back in the saddle was a fairly recent story regarding an irritated guest. So it was a busy day and I was working hard to check people in, doing my best to be generally pleasant. A lady walked up and I could tell she was in a bad mood and didn't want to deal with me. Having a hyperactive child with her might have had something to do with it. Regardless, I had a job to do, so here we go. "Hello, ma'am. How can I assist you today?" "Check me in." "Okay, just don't talk and check her in. Got it." "Alright, can I get your credit card and ID?" While she's fishing out her cards from a purse that seemed like another entrance to the Cave of Wonders, Another guest approaches the front desk from the side. I turn to look at him. He holds out a keycard with a sheepish smile. "Hey man, my card stopped opening my door. Do you mind recharging it?" Before I could even open my mouth to reply, the lady snaps her head to glare at him. "He's checking me in. Go to the back of the line and wait your turn." Both the other guests in line and I give her a baffled stare. "I just need my key recharged because my service dog is in a room," he said, trying to explain. "I need to get back in soon." "Well, I have a kid, so go away." Now I had to step into the growing storm. Damn me my sense of duty, which is about my only redeeming quality. "Ma'am, please don't use that language with our guests," I interjected firmly. "Shut up and do your job. I don't need you telling me how to act, you addict." She scoffed haughtily. What?" Whispers immediately went down the line, and several people glared at her with growing anger. My eyes narrowed, but I persevered through the irritation creeping up and checked her in so I wouldn't have to deal with her any longer than strictly necessary. She left and the guy behind her in line offered his spot to the man who needed his key recharged. We both smiled at him and the guy got his keys done, nodding at me before leaving. I finished one check-in and was halfway through the next when she stormed back to the front desk, cutting in without preamble. "That isn't the king suite I wanted," she howled. For your information, she hadn't booked the suite and was not a member I could upgrade. The guy I was helping rubbed his forehead, and I wanted to join him when I told her that I needed her to wait at the back of the line before I could help her, as I had to check in the people who had been patiently waiting. Several people agreed, and she began demanding that I call the manager. So I multitasked the check-in and called him to the front desk while I was at it. He arrived at the front desk and I directed him to speak with the irate guest. The moment he asked what the issue was, she began a massive rant. "That front desk agent is obviously on drugs and can't do his job properly. He's also way too tired to be working. Why did you even hire a drug addict like him? He obviously can't even read the type of room properly because he didn't assign me a suite but a regular king room. You should fire him if you have any good sense. I have a child and I don't need shoddy service like this when I can go 2 miles up the street and get 10 times better service for $10 more." Paraphrasing, of course. I don't need to type out the entire rant, which was much longer. The guests and I all stared at her, and I absently wished I had some popcorn to snack on. My general manager quietly waited for her to finish and then nodded. "Well, if that's the case, ma'am, then I strongly encourage you to do just that." The entire lobby fell silent and the woman was baffled. She huffed, went upstairs to get her stuff and her kids, and she stormed out of the property after canceling her reservation. My GM patted me on the shoulder, told me not to mind bats, and apologized to the guest in line for the commotion. The guy who had been in line nodded to me and said, "I think you handled that as best as you could." I would have lost my temper. This malicious compliance comes from a few years ago when I was working as an external developer for a software house. The team was great and the lead developer, let's call him Mark, was simply the best to work with. He was a very skilled developer with also the ability to easily coordinate the team's tasks. We also had a manager, John, who was also very friendly and easy to talk to. Our job was going smoothly. The company tracked the progress of the various projects in a software where John divided them into various steps. John set up these steps very broadly, like analysis, initial setup, development, release, maintenance, to avoid creating too many of them. We then needed to input the time we spent on each of these steps. If the project was missing some steps or hit the budget cap, we couldn't input our timesheets and technically weren't allowed to start working. Per company policy, our duty was to inform our direct supervisor about these issues, in this case Mark. He then should have informed John, who finally would have to increase the cap. As a good manager that he was, John knew all the steps were a huge waste of Mark's and our time. So he allowed us to temporarily sign our timesheets locally and start or continue our work. Gather himself all of our cap increase requests together, do all of them simultaneously, and then directly let us know we could input our timesheets in the software. Then the company got acquired by a hedge fund. Suddenly, a lot of new middle managers appeared, and John was moved to a higher position in a different department. To replace him, they hired Phil. Phil tried to present himself as the open to everyone's request manager, but it became obvious pretty quickly that he was more of a "I'll stick to company policies as hard as I can" guy, probably to appeal to his ego or to some higher up. First thing he did was to completely change the project's organization to better check the project advancement. Now, in a project, every task, every little change had its own step and budget cap. Remember that if the step was not in the software, we weren't allowed to start working on it. He then enforced our daily timesheets input. It became mandatory to input them at maximum the next day, so we could be more responsible about marking the project's progress. It could have been okay if it wasn't for the fact that project budgets were drastically reduced. Basically, after reaching the middle of our developments, we already reached those caps and could not insert any more timesheets. When we started asking Phil about creating those tips or raising the budget caps, like we did with John, he quickly redirected us to Mark, as that was a company policy and the proper chain of command. Mark's job quickly became hell, as he basically had to spend half day asking Phil to create project tips or raise caps. We knew we were bothering Mark and he knew we couldn't do anything else. He tried to talk to Phil about easing these policies, but without success. At the end of the month, everyone was behind with the timesheets input, and some tasks were not started at all. Phil gathered us and other teams and started his rant about how it was our fault since we required too much time to do our job and it was not acceptable. As our team leader, Mark was particularly targeted and probably missed some bonuses that he had no problem getting when John was the manager. His fault? Well, not letting Phil know soon enough that steps weren't available or budget caps were reached. If it was enough for him, it was time to maliciously comply with company policies. He asked Phil to let us stay some minutes after the meeting to explain to us how to resolve these issues. He agreed but wanted to stay in the meeting too. Mark calmly said to us, "It's imperative that you tell me and only me that steps are missing or caps have been reached as soon as you notice. You must send me an email with this precise subject. I'll then inform Phil. Only mere requests will be accepted." He remarked various times that the mail needed to have a specific subject format like Project X, Step Y, Missing, or Project X, Step Y, Cap Reached. And every time he was looking at us with a look that was saying, "Just do like I say, trust me." We started doing exactly what he told us and soon discovered why he was so confident. A few days passed and an angry Phil stormed into our room yelling at Mark that his behavior was unacceptable, and an urgent meeting with the higher-ups was scheduled in a few minutes. Mark went and after about half an hour returned with a satisfied look on his face. And after him, a defeated Phil. He later told us that he basically set up a forwarding rule in his mailbox, which forwarded to Phil every single mail whose subjects matched the patterns above, with a predefined text like, "Dear Phil, I'd like to inform you that the team brought to my attention the fact that Project X had missing Step Y. Dear Phil, I'd like to inform you that the team brought to my attention the fact that Project X is missing Step Y," or similar. In those few days, he submerged Phil's mailbox with our requests. Phil probably hoped that the outcome of the meeting would have went in his favor, but the higher-ups stated that no company policy was violated here. Mark wasn't spamming, as those were all legitimate work-related emails, and it was Phil's duty to appropriately manage the situation. Also, Mark now had proof that he was immediately notifying Phil about the project's issues, so nothing could be his or our fault anymore. I stopped working for the company shortly after, but after a few months, he told me that Phil was demoted and moved to another position with lesser responsibilities. My wife, Grace, 25 female, has a sister, Joy, 27 female. I, 25 male, have been married to Grace for almost 4 years, and the issues with Joy started a couple of years ago, but I ignored it until I felt like it was missing with my head. So I decided to tell Grace about this, and so the conflict has started. But to give the full picture, I need to give some background. I'm an affair baby. I was conceived the day my aunt passed away. The whole family found out about it. I have siblings/cousins were repulsed, but even more when I came along. My maternal grandparents had a lot of mixed emotions, but ultimately decided not to be in my life because my half-siblings said they would lose them if they were in my life. My paternal grandparents made the same choice when posed with the same ultimatum. Both my parents were present in my life growing up, but they weren't together. My half-siblings were all grown by the time I was 7, so they weren't in my life for long. But the years I was around them did a lot of psychological harm. I suffered from low self-esteem most of my life, and I isolated myself as a way to not have more people hate me, and out of disgust for myself. My parents were frustrated by my actions. A few times they asked if it was my way of punishing them. They didn't understand, and today we're very low contact. Grace knows about my background, and my in-laws do as well, including Joy. This is why I struggle with Joy. She knows, but she has this habit of bringing up how important it is to have a good birth story when I'm around, but Grace and the rest of my in-laws are not. She has never said anything too extreme, so I always dismissed it myself as me being sensitive due to my past and never said a thing. But then a couple of months ago, we were at my in-laws for Joy's birthday. Joy was chatting to some family friends and neighbors of my in-laws and directly asked me to share my birth story with everyone else. The whole thing caught me off guard and upset me. I felt like I was being called out, and so I excused myself and started to isolate like I had in the past. Grace noticed and approached me to find out what was wrong. I knew Joy had been way more direct and cruel in her actions this time, so I told Grace. Grace confronted Joy after the party ended and the two argued. Then the rest of my in-laws found out. Ever since, Joy has been pissed at me for snitching and telling on her like a child. She holds a very strong grudge against me for her family being unhappy with her. This makes her furious, and she has claimed I handled it like a boy instead of a man. Am I the jerk? And now some comments on a post. Someone saying, "You're not the jerk." 1. Joy is maliciously cruel. She knows what hurts you, and she presses that button whenever she can get away with it. 2. Snitching culture is designed to protect wrongdoers and is immoral and diversionary. You handled it like a man by disclosing her hidden, awful behavior, which subjected her to the family shaming she richly deserves. Not sure what flavor her toxic idea of masculinity was, but what did she want? For you to hit her? For you to tell her to get lost in front of acquaintances at a social gathering? 3. You can ignore her and her diversionary grudge. It's simply a pivot in how she bullies you. Or you can counterattack every time she brings it up. Remind her that a woman with the viciousness of a bullying child has zero credibility as to what makes a man, and that she is a stranger to maturity and integrity and needs to work on herself. 4. Your history is a pretty strong indictment against the unfortunately all too common redditors who feel it's okay for siblings to dehumanize and ostracize affair babies. Another commenter adds, "Not the jerk." That is some nonsense narrative she's trying to get you to believe. You didn't tell on her like a child. A child intentionally tries to hurt the other person by getting them in trouble with someone that is an authority figure. That isn't what you did. What you did is to try to get the pain you were feeling to stop. You explained to your partner why your behavior changed, which is what you're supposed to do. Joy puts you in a situation to humiliate you, to make you feel less than everyone else. She likes the power it gives her. She felt it was her birthday, so she could get away with it. And you were strong enough and smart enough to realize your wife is an ally and had your back. So, it backfired on Joy. But Joy isn't willing to hang her head and beg for forgiveness for her wretchedness. Instead, she gets angry at you and expects you to handle it like a child would, but tells you the cover story that you should have handled it like a man. You did handle it like a man. You didn't cause a scene. Didn't get aggressive. Didn't humiliate her in the moment. You disengaged so you could respond rather than react. Anger is a secondary emotion, and it's covering the true feelings Joy cannot face about the situation. I think a few sessions of counseling would help you work through these feelings of abandonment and the triggers you still experience. You did well here. Don't let her twist your mind. She's not your friend. A third commenter goes with, "Not the jerk." Joy sounds like a psychopath. That is really twisted behavior, and you should avoid contact with Joy in the future. If you're both at family events, then make sure you are never alone with her or in any conversation with her and others. Normally, an apology would be expected, but in this case, I would not believe it. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.